Welcome to Bring Out Your Badass Self, a movement to break your negative thoughts and habits and instead focus on building each other up and encouraging fearless authenticity.
Each episode, we will get vulnerable and share experiences alongside our guests and audience. Come rediscover your inner badass self.
Good morning, fellow badasses. We are so glad that you are here today. Please let me know that you are here by just simply saying hello and letting me know if you are here and ready for today's topic. And I want you to know that you're going to see some familiar faces and some new ones, as you can see today. And so today, notes will be required. I would like to welcome for the first time today's guest co-host. It is Kristina Harman. So welcome, Kristina.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I have to warn you, I'm losing my voice a little. I have vocal nodules and it's been a week, so they act up. So if it gets a little hard, I'll try to project a little more. Let me know.
No worries. I was telling her that for me, whenever I get sick or whenever I have that, I get my sexy voice. And so for me, you just have your sexy voice today.
I wish that were the case. It used to be, but it's gone so far that it's kind of gone into that Bobby Kennedy territory. I really need to have the surgery done, you know.
Oh, no. Well, so. I think that it's a very deep, it's almost like a Janis Joplin type vibe.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
All right. Well, I do see some people coming in. So I do want to say hello to them. And then I want to do an official introduction. So we have Carmen coming in. She's over in California, getting up way early in the morning, as she always does. Good morning, my beautiful badass. And she says, have an amazing show. Sending you love, sisters. So glad that you are here, Carmen. We also have a LinkedIn person. I'm not able to see you, and I didn't log in today. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But you may have to add the permission through StreamYard for us to see your name. So I'm going to try to figure out who this is. They say, good morning, here for the first time. Thanks for this. So we're so glad that you're here, and we hope that you continue to come back as we continue on. And so as you guys are joining, I also know that we have some lurkers. I get a lot of people that are like, yeah, I was on, but you know, I was just checking things out. So we appreciate our lurkers as well, and the people that watch us on replay. So continue to let us know that you're here. And I would like to do an official introduction. So Kristina has never been with us before, but I am super excited to have her. She is a senior technical writer, ghostwriter, and accessibility specialist with 23 years of experience in complex industries. And she studies rhetoric as a practical discipline and how language clarifies truth, shapes judgment, and signals red flags when it's used irresponsibly. And so welcome officially, Kristina.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for having me and inviting me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, I tracked you down with my research skills, and I just loved the things that you were writing about. And I thought you would just make a great co-host for today's topic. And so maybe you can also just give a little bit more to the audience on who you are or what you have going on right now.
Sure. Like you said, I'm a technical writer. I love it. Most people don't say that, but I do. It's kind of like being an accountant in that way. If you don't love it, if you just doing it to make an extra buck, you're not going to be successful. I love it because I think everyone deserves equal access to difficult information, whether that means that you're a layperson or a patient, or it means that you can't hear or you are disabled in some way, so you can't move the mouse. So I work on all those things. That's what accessibility means. When I talk about accessibility, I mean it from an informational standpoint. So information and communication technology, not a ADA standpoint, though I care about both. So
I got you. I'm glad you clarified that. And so, because I was thinking the other way.
Yeah, it can be confusing. And there's a law, it's Section 508 under the Federal Rehabilitation Act, that actually mandates most executive government branches or agencies, to make their documentation compliant. And so our company where I work, EA, Engineering, Science and Technology, they work really hard. I'm really proud of them for how much work and effort they put into making sure their environmental engineering reports and other types of reports are compliant, so that people with disabilities have access to the information that they need and deserve.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I do want to say hello to Kim. She's joining us. She says good morning and happy Friday to some amazing badass ladies. So you're already in the mix. Kristina, you are officially a badass now.
Well, thank you.
Yes. And the LinkedIn user was Jana Viles Saxon. So I don't know if you're familiar with her, but first time that person is joining us today.
Yes.
Welcome to you.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. And so for those that missed last week or those that are brand new, I wanted to just outline what it is that BOYBAS is doing this year. And so this year is all about awakening the power within. And I really would like to encourage you, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. You know, share with others that you think could help as we go through this year's goal of awakening the power within. And what we're going to be doing is weeks 1 and 2, each topic. I will be bringing on a lovely guest co-host like Kristina here today to dive into our topics. And they're really designed to guide you deeper into self-awareness and really lasting empowerment. And the third week, which is going to be next week, we're going to be doing for the very first time, we're going to be going to a link that you will join into a conversation. You can join via just via phone. You can join live, or with video, but it's going to be a private group. So it's not going to be live for everyone to see. It's going to be private. We're going to have a conversation. And I'm going to be adding in that link to this particular episode so you guys can see it, but I'll also be advertising it so you guys can have that for next week. And so we're really just going to be doing deep dive conversations in that. And so make sure that the link that I give you, that you save it as a favorite, because it's going to be the same for each third week. So you don't have to go hunting and pecking for it each week. So I decided to make it the same link, so it'll make it easier for everyone. And so for this year, we're really dedicating this year to bringing buried truths into the light, shattering the self-deceptions we cling to, and empowering our community to grow, question, and belong. And so the year is going to be divided into quarters. Q1, which is where we're at right now, is going to be focused on awareness and how societal messages keep us trapped in fear, shame, and division. And Q2, we're really going to be building upon and getting skills and self-efficacy to reframe and rewire our mindset that give us the tools needed to believe in ourselves. And Q3, we're going to be putting those new skills to work. We're going to be focusing on boosting your confidence and then strengthening our bonds. And Q4, we're going to focus on peace and resilience and how we can cultivate inner calm and then the bounce back ability to learn from setbacks. So, all right, let's dive into today's topic to start our long journey for this year. And so we're going to be focusing on recognizing emotional appeals in messaging. And so where I'd like to start off is, one, Kristina, I'm really happy to have someone join me with a greater understanding of this stuff than me. So first, thank you for agreeing. But I also thought we might start off with, why did you say yes? What interested you in this?
It's a good question. Well, right away I thought I'm not an expert, right? And so I thought, no, it's probably not a good idea. But then I kept thinking about it, and a couple of times my wife, the beautiful rhetorician that she is, would remind me that you're not giving a dissertation, you're having a conversation. So I realized that it was a challenge. I've never done a live stream. And though this isn't my expertise, it doesn't mean I don't have anything valuable to add, right? Mm-hmm. Certainly I do. I practice it every day because I believe in it. And I think that if we lose sight of what real rhetoric was designed to do, which, it wasn't really designed by anyone. It's pretty natural in a lot of ways, which we can get into, but it was classified and refined. And what it was really designed to do is illuminate truth and help us come to a peaceful consensus that moves us forward. And that's not how we're seeing it defined. So I felt like, you know what, let's get on here. Let's see if what I can do and how much truth I can illuminate. And the other reason, if I'm honest, I almost said no on Monday because we had to put our 19-year-old border collie down. 19 years is a long time.
Yeah.
And I'd had him since I was 25. So I was a dumb 20-year-old. And he got me through a lot. He carried me through a lot. So it was a really tough loss. So I was like, I can't, in my most petulant self, I can't do this. I'm too upset. And then I thought about the dog and how 19 years he persevered, pushed me through some really challenging times. Border collies are insanely resilient. And he showed that and demonstrated that for so long. And not only that, but he was a beautiful rhetorician. So what better way to honor that loss and end the week on a good note? Long answer.
I love that. And I'm sorry for your loss. I know that many times pets that have been with us for a long time. I had a 17-year-old half Dachshund, half Chihuahua growing up that had passed away. And then I had a cat that I just very much loved. And she lasted longer than my two relationships before my husband. And so sometimes, we have those pets that just mean so much to
dog
us.
or animal. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I'm sorry about your loss, but I'm glad that you're also honoring your dog in today's, and I'm glad that you are joining us today because I think that people, I think you're very modest in what it is that you're saying as far as not being an expert. And many times we feel like we are not experts on topics, but I can tell you, just having already talked to you backstage, you guys are going to really enjoy the things that Kristina has to say because she really does know her stuff. And some of the stuff that I've seen online and things like that. So I think that people will see that you actually, that they can learn a lot from you. So I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Modesty is a rhetorical move, I'll be honest.
Well, I love that. And so, in today's episode of Recognizing Emotional Appeals in Messaging, we're going to be exploring the original purpose, as you were talking about, of ethos, pathos, and logos. And as Aristotle and his classical successors envisioned them, and as tools for advancing truth and justice. And then we're going to examine how those very appeals can be distorted. And then we're going to learn how to spot them when they're being twisted. So that is today's topic. And so I know we're going to start off, maybe a little high in sort of the first question, and then we'll bring it back down and focus on, okay, well, what does all this mean? So first I want to start with, how did Aristotle and even later rhetorical users conceive each appeal's role in serving honesty, virtue, and reason?
Yeah. So that's a big question, and I'm going to try to answer it in two ways just to start, because I think we need to look at the whole picture before we talk about the appeals, and they sound really scary, but they're not. So the only way something really is rhetoric, like I said earlier, in the traditional sense, not the modern degraded one, is if it serves us ethically. If we have consent, that's a big part of it. So like honesty, virtue, reason are built into every part of it, into all the fibers. Those appeals that you mentioned, we've been doing rhetoric since babies, right? When we cry, we change the way we cry. Mother notices, there's credibility and trust built. So, we've been doing it forever, but rhetoricians like Aristotle noticed it, and they noticed that in Greek democracy, when they used it, they weren't using it ethically all the time. So what he did was to categorize it, and it all rests on ethics. So those appeals that you talked about, they were built to be like a pinnacle. Ethos, pathos, logos. There's one in the middle we'll talk about later, and I'll tell you what they all mean. But basically, if one of them falls short, they kind of all collapse. And Aristotle and other rhetoricians like him assume that good rhetoric, a good rhetorical exchange, I should say, requires a shared mental framework, or even that the participants, even if they disagreed, that they all understood what was and wasn't ethical, right? So it relies on the audience and the speaker to sort of have that shared understanding. And I think for us to really understand how they envision them to work together, we have to understand what they mean, right? So ethos is the character of the person who's delivering the speech or writing the communication or trying to get your attention in whatever way.
Yeah.
Can you trust that person? That's what it means. And so as someone who is coming onto your show to speak, and my way of building credibility with you may be different than someone else's. We all have different ways that we do that. I tend to self-deprecate a little bit, and I've been told not to do it. But I'll tell you what, I think humility is a good thing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it as long as you don't go too far. It works. It works rhetorically. I learned that with as a kid with ADHD, right? I learned that if I could, sort of, it's not manipulation. It's more like changing the way that someone sees something so that they can sort of see it through your own perspective. Like, and as a child, the credibility you have with your parent already exists, which is the ethos that we're talking about. So I might say something to my parent like, the cookie jar got broke, because I knew that it felt differently to them than if I said I broke the cookie jar. So, can I trust you? That's your ethos. Are you credible? Do you have good character? And do you know what you're talking about? Like, why should I listen to you at all? That's what ethos is. And that's the biggest part. Everything rests on that. And after that, we start appealing to emotion, and emotion really matters. So you can't skip it, not to overwhelm us, but to motivate us. If we don't care about something, then we're not going to listen to the reason or logic that the person's giving us, right?
Yeah.
And I think healthy pathos or emotional persuasion, it helps make human issues that are abstract something that we can understand. Like, we use imagery and writing to do that. It also helps an audience to care enough, like I said earlier. So the last one is logos, which is our reasoning and logic. So when someone's trying to persuade you to do something for ethical reasons, of course, they're going to use logical, sound reasoning, and they're not going to bypass that reasoning with emotion, which is a red flag. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And so I guess just to break it down for the audience as we start to talk about these. So, ethos, as you said, is really that credibility and authority. So, and you really focused on the fact that it's the messages that bring trust by really highlighting someone's expertise or reputation. And I can tell you, even a part of, as we have done this show, I have individuals that are like, well, I'm not an expert, on this. And as you mentioned, I think saying that, like, this is, my experience, that does bring some credibility. But then you also do have people, credibility and reputation can also be those degrees or titles or awards and things like that, or sometimes those well-known figures or institutions. But then, we also we'll get into this, but understanding a little bit later on how that can be, potentially manipulated as well. Yeah.
And it's important to note that it's really difficult to hang your hat on credentials alone. It's the best. So building credibility is best built through trust over a long time, but we don't always have that chance. So, just establishing myself as an expert doesn't mean I care. Yeah. Right? Like Ben Franklin said, if nobody knows that you care, they don't care what you know. Pretty much I butchered that quote, but and that's true. So they need to know that I have their back, that I'm not giving them misinformation, at least certainly not on purpose, that I'm not misleading them or trying to make them feel a way without their consent.
Yeah.
And that's all important. You can be the best doctor in the world, but if you're a dick,
oh, then probably not, I'm not going to have much trust. Yeah, I'm not going to have so much trust in you.
Exactly.
And then as we get into pathos, so that emotion, and as you talked about, it's really getting into sometimes even the vivid or sensory words or stories and things like that people might do. Yeah.
Like the one I gave about the border collie.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. What are some other examples? I'm thinking also about like, sometimes emotions have to do with fear, and we're going to, as we start to get into some of those, that sometimes there is validity in the fear tactics and sometimes there isn't as well.
There's some great examples around that. Don't let me forget to bring up the ASPCA.
Okay. All right.
Because that's good.
Oh my gosh. That one just, pulls on your heartstrings. My husband hates that commercial, by the way.
We've rescued a million. Like, I've rescued so many dogs in my life. I was a foster rescuer and everything. And I mute it. I think it's good they do it. Don't get me wrong, but
I
it's
agree.
so hard. Ugh, it's heart wrenching.
He's just like, I can't watch this.
I don't know what's happening. Yeah.
Oh gosh. And then you have logos, and as you mentioned, that's logic and reasoning. So it's really about building.
You just be emotional, right?
Exactly. Yeah, because you got to have some data and facts to back things up.
You can't just say, if you don't do this, the world will do, the sky will fall down. Like, unless you've built so much credibility with somebody that they're like a god. Seriously, that's what it takes. And that's becomes cult-like thinking. And we'll get into all that, as I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So those types of things really sometimes are studies or white papers or cause and effect, or sometimes the charts that we, use in business and things like that. So I just wanted to give people a little bit of example of the 4 that we're going to be talking about. Maybe we can also go ahead and talk about that 4th one. But before you do that, I want to bring up a couple of comments. One, so that LinkedIn user, I think it was Jana. Yes, she said, I'm sorry about Eddie. So just so you know, my dad's name was Eddie. So we have like a connection here. And
I love that.
Yeah. And then I think this is a really good comment. As you essentially said, there's a reason they're stated in this order: ethos, pathos, and logic. And I really like that, because we have to have truth and credibility first, and then getting into the emotions. Then, okay, I'm feeling this way, but what type of data do we now have to back that up?
Exactly. And you have to ask, what's this person asking from me? What do they want from me? What emotion are they asking me to feel? It's a two-way street. It's like a dance, really. If you as the speaker, so me as the speaker right now, and the audience as the listener, we have to agree that we're going to do this with in good faith. It's almost like when they say in AA to keep your side of the street clean, and you're in a relationship, and if the other person does that, it works beautifully. It can be hard. That none of it's easy, but it is a natural thing that we learn from birth. And I watch my cats do it, right? They have their own sense of rhetoric without any language at all. So it's pretty. That's what makes it so beautiful. I hate to see the word so just degraded to mean lie. And the worst part is that politicians know it doesn't mean lie. They hide behind neutral, or actually what I think is a beautiful word. And then they use that to hijack our emotion. They hijack our emotions and bypass our reasoning. And it's not just one side. Both sides say it. That's rhetoric. No, it's not. That's not rhetoric. That's called a lie.
Well, and we even have now media doing that, instead of like media used to do things where they would always present the actual balance of both sides and look at the facts and the credibility and all of those things. Now they just bring on people and appeal just to the emotions and
they even use the word rhetoric incorrectly over and over. They do it. That's just rhetoric, don't you think? I mean, I hear that your media doing it too. You're right, and it's like they don't need to use. They don't need to use the word, if they didn't want to. And I think they do it for a good reason. It's become a trigger word, and that's really sad.
It is. And then you have marketing, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. And I think we'll even dive into like other, type of, even institutions and things like that, that sometimes will get into things that really aren't getting also into the, deep, they're focused just on the emotional side of the house. So we'll get into that. So talk about the 4th one that isn't that was sort of added.
So it's always existed, but Aristotle and rhetoricians like him loved sets of 3s. My goodness, pairs of 3. They love sets of 3 because there was less mental cognitive overload. With 4, it gets to be a lot, and anything less didn't seem like enough, right? And 3 really is a pretty magical number, but it makes sense for us mentally. So I think that's maybe why I always wonder if maybe that's why he didn't add it as an appeal right away, but it is one, and it's an important one. And I kind of think of them like a pinnacle with this one in the middle. It's pronounced Kairos. It's spelled like Kairos, Kairos, but it's pronounced Kairos. I had to write that down because I always get it wrong. And it's the 4th appeal, which means the right timing and context. So like if I want to see, I want to get more coins for my coin collection, which I often do. I'm not going to have that conversation like with my wife while she's on a work call because it's not the right time. I mean, that's an obvious one, but maybe even better if she wanted to get another job, it wouldn't be the right time to ask me on Monday, right? So context matters too, and timing.
Okay. So the timing of when you say those types of things. So you're saying that when my husband is dealing with a bunch of pressure from work, or he's in the shower, that may not be a good time to go and appeal to him.
Yeah, exactly. And it may actually also be the perfect time depending on how you do it.
Ooh.
So a good example, it's from, and I'm going to steal it straight because rhetoricians often steal good rhetoric, as Shakespeare. But this book here, Thank You for Arguing, if you're interested in anything we talk about today, this man he's amazing. He wrote it. And it's Jay Heinrich's Thank You for Arguing. And he gives this example about how he's in the shower and he wants he gets out of the shower and it's cold and he's got his towel on and he realizes there's no toothpaste. So he calls for his son and he's like, damn it, who left the toothpaste? It's in the basement. And his son, because he's a rhetorician, is learned to be one too. So his son says to him, Dad, that's not the real question, is it? The real question is, how will we prevent this from happening again? And he's like, ooh, he won. And he's like, but did he? Because he was like, ooh, you got me there, son, good one. And his son went down and got him the toothpaste. So they all won, right? In the end, it sounds a little like manipulation sometimes, but here's the thing. We all have to be willing participants for it not to be manipulation. And the end goal is not to harm someone ever. It's to find peace and harmony and get us all to a place where we all feel like our needs are being met and we're being heard. And I think it runs through everything. I think I mentioned like the Fibonacci code or sequence. Yeah, I'm not a mathematician, but or like the golden ratio. It's just, it's natural for us. And that's something that Aristotle noticed. And he also noticed that like any medication that's strong enough to hurt you or help you is also strong enough to hurt you. Same with rhetoric, right? Anything that's as powerful as using the 4 appeals at the right time all together really well can also be used to harm you.
Yeah. And I just added the little chat thing so people can see. We have people coming from different places. So please continue to add your comments. Let us know what you think about this particular topic. And then if you have questions, please add those as well, because we really want this to be an interactive conversation. And so, I started to think about my husband in the shower. I know this is a little bit personal, but we got 2 shower heads. We actually take a shower and we actually call it our shower time. So that's when we have actually most of our conversations about, like, what's going on, for the day and things like that. So,
you know what? That's a really good example of Kairos, because you set yourself up in the right time and place and the right, like literally the right setting, because you're relaxed, you're together.
Yeah.
Perfect. Love it.
I love that. As an example.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think about pathos, so those emotional triggers are most commonly exploited today and meant to sort of short circuit our rational reflection. Can we maybe hone in on what those emotional triggers are that are most commonly exploited?
You cut out for a second. You said that which ones are the most commonly exploited?
The emotional triggers that are most commonly exploited today.
I think shortest answer ever, anger and fear. But to expand on that, as we talked about earlier, the original definition of rhetoric is the disciplined use of language to help us reason and to judge clearly about things. So that's not the modern definition. It's devolved. It was never meant to win an argument. It was about working through disagreements in public. And so now when you see emotional triggers that hijack your reasoning, that make you act now urgently, or this is going to happen, the sky's going to fall, that's when you start to wonder, like, what am I being told? By whom? Should I believe it? It really becomes dangerous when it abandons the purpose that rhetoricians really wanted it to provide in the first place. This is helping me to think or rush to decide. And we know that emotion is necessary. Without it, we can't engage. But Aristotle never intended it to replace our reason. And that's when it gets scary, only to open the door to it, right? It should invite thinking and never preempt it. So I think the biggest red flags for me appear when it creates a sense of urgency that discourages any questions at all. When we create a sense of urgency, like you were saying in technology, and I'm sure you'll make some of those points, I won't make them for you, but in safety anyway, which is similar, that urgency is reasonable because it's real. Right? That sense of urgency. But when someone says to you, if you don't vote, the sky is going to fall, they're hijacking your reason or logic, or they're trying to. I think a big one is fear or anger, because fear and anger are such difficult emotions. They're really strong ones, and they hijack our reasoning, especially fear, but anger does too. You know, your brain's ability to think clearly just shrinks. So they're really easy ones for people to grab onto. And so that's my first red flag. Do I feel angry right now? Do I feel moral outrage? Do I feel afraid? And if so, why is this person asking me or trying to convince me to feel this way? And if the question is to benefit them, another big red flag only, right? And there's no reason or logic that makes sense, then that's another red flag. And I think a lot of things we hear are like fear, like do this or else. Outrage, so anger mistaken for moral clarity. Identity threat, you know, people like you are under attack, that kind of false urgency, this is your last chance, you know, those are the kinds of things I look for. When I feel rushed, cornered, or morally trapped, that is my cue to pause generally.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that. So I am a part of technology. So I'm in the software industry. And one of the things that I noticed when I joined is that they had a lot of those fear tactics. It was like, you know, oh, you know, but you gotta, you know, well, you know, you're going to miss this deal if you don't, you know, if you don't do that. And we really got away from that. And it's been interesting because I have found
work that well.
Well, I also, you know, people hate it.
Yes.
And so, you know, we went down a different path. Like we're like, you know, hey, there are some things, you know, that, you know, there are some deadlines, but people started to trust us because we weren't doing that. And so when we did say that, they understood, oh, this is real.
Serious.
Like, you know, this is. And so we, you know, whenever I came on board, I was like, I don't like that. And I was like, because that's not real. Like you're creating a false sense of urgency. And we want to establish a relationship with this client. Like we're going to continue.
So you needed more ethos before you could use that pathos.
Correct. And that's exactly what we really focused on is let's focus on building the relationship.
That's right.
And therefore, when we are ready, when we've already established then the relationship, and we come to them and say, hey, you know, I think you guys actually could benefit from these types of things. We've already built that and established that credibility, that ethos. So then the emotion and things like that, we then can talk about that. But then we're adding, you know, the logo. So we're adding like, here's the reasoning, you know, related to it. And that to me has served us well from a sales perspective in how it is that we're approaching business. And as I look at just society and some of those things, some of the things you said, I just really love it that you pointed out that when you feel fear or when you feel anger, maybe if we just stop for a moment and say, why am I feeling this way? And is there validity? Is there an actual reason, you know, for this, or are they just playing upon my emotions?
Big time. That's when you slow down, because emotion without reason or logic is they want you to hurry and speed you up. So that's when something feels like it wants you to go quickly. That's when you stop right away. I don't care. Stop. Like, you know, think about it for a second, because sometimes even the best intended people aren't always right either. There's a lot of reasons why we should slow ourselves down when we feel that way.
Yes.
And that's, you know, to not be manipulated is one of them.
Well, funny enough, my husband and I, you know, we had done, when we first got together, we had done a communications course. You know, it was a for us to be able to better communicate with each other as a couple. And then here recently, I'm like, we probably need to go and just have a little bit of a tune-up and meet with someone. And so we've been meeting. We just met for the first time, and one of the things that she talked about is we were talking about fear, like why do you feel like that, and things like that. And so, and when we do get into arguments, one of the things she said is have like a safe word. So say whatever the safe word is when you recognize you're feeling a particular way, to be able to alert each other, and then take a moment to breathe. So simply take a moment. And I think when we're hearing sometimes these messages, whether it's from our spouse or from media or whatever, I love that you said, take a break and go breathe.
Yeah, we're being hit everywhere too. And this has gotten so much worse. And I'm not going to blame an administration, because I'm not going to do that. But I will say it's gotten a lot worse because I would assume social media doesn't help, because we're so connected and things go so fast. We are seeing more rhetoric in this administration. I can't lie about that, but we see it on both sides for sure. And I call it out on both sides. I don't believe personally that anything in this world is black and white. And if you tell me that it is, I automatically won't believe you. So, in a lot of ways, I'm a centrist, even as a social justice warrior. And I'm both of those things at the same time. And it can be very hard. I think we've moved too far away from being able to have two thoughts at once. And what I mean by a centrist is I mean that I understand that as a democracy, everybody's point of view in this country matters. And I can't just say you're wrong and you're an idiot, and so you don't get you know what I mean? That's why we have the states divided. There's so many reasons why we've done it the way we've done it. And so we have to remember that if we're going to be good rhetoricians on our own side, whatever side that is, one bird, guys, two wings. Let's not forget. My dad used to always tell me that, the right and the left needed each other, like the head and the heart of the country. And I just feel like we've lost that. So, the rhetoric rested on civility. One of the most beautiful rhetorical moments, I don't remember which one it was, but it was one of the debates before they stopped being able to debate. And one of the presidents just conceded what a beautiful speaker. I want to say it was Obama. What a beautiful speaker he was, and how talented he was, and he is and was. So, as a president and currently. So, that brought me a lot of credibility with that speaker, because acknowledging someone else's strengths is not a weakness. And the audience knows that,
Yeah. I think you hit upon a key word, civility, like getting back to that. And interestingly enough, my daughter asked me the other day, she goes, I don't understand when a party says like, we should really only have one of these parties. She goes, don't we really need both of them?
Yes.
And I was like, yes, we do.
They represent the people of the country. Absolutely. And if you think that one side's just all the time, always wrong, I think that's, it just doesn't work,
Yeah. We have, for me, in order to balance things, we really, a lot of times two things can be true at the same time.
Exactly. We have to hold two truths. You nailed it. And we've forgotten how to do that big time.
Yeah.
And it's a lot about what you talked about with your husband, and they use rhetoric in therapy so well. They teach us to speak to each other with civility, to take responsibility for ourselves. I concede all the time. It's one of my favorites to concede. I concede that I was wrong about this to get this, not because I'm a jerk, but because I'm wrong. It's the right thing to do. There's reason and logic behind it. And that doesn't make me cold. It makes me thoughtful in my mind.
Yeah. We have a couple of comments, and we have some new people I want to say hello to. Nick is coming in. She said, good morning, folks, joining from New York. So thanks for joining us, Nick. We also have some really good comments. I think this is Jana again. And so she said, great points. Security training usually warns about phishing emails using those tactics. So, whenever you think about those things like, oh, you need to go ahead and do this, you do this now.
That's right.
So they add that urgency of you got to take care of things, or this is going to happen about that. Yeah, or you're gonna, this is going to happen to you if you don't do this.
Brilliant one. I don't even. That's not even. I was like going down cults and related, and I never even thought about the scammers. Wow. Yes.
And then she said, pitch slaps on LinkedIn are notorious for integrating an element of fear, mostly of missing out. I think FOMO, fear of missing, or FOMO, fear of missing out is definitely one of those things. And I can tell you, it definitely gets my daughter. Like, she's like, but mom, like, I think about
fear of missing out. I'm like, please leave me out. I'm good.
I know.
It's true. Like, I just
most of the time I don't care. I'm like, whatever.
if it's something I'm really excited about, but generally I don't. Yeah, the hype part of it turns me off. I think because in the 90s, like I was like into punk, and so it was like do the opposite of what's cool. Yeah. Still kind of living in me, a little bit.
I know. Even whenever you think about like the buying, they're like, oh, there's a deal going on. If you don't do it now, you're not going to get it. So,
I get the justice meter and I get mad. I'm like, no. Like when I get texts from people and I can tell they're scammers, I write back. My wife's like, you're nuts. Stop. I'm like, I know you're full of shit. Your grammar's terrible, which is what they do on purpose, because they know that if they use bad grammar and you write back that, you're particularly vulnerable. It's one of the techniques. So, but I have like this sense of justice that I just think things should be fair and as fair as we can make them. And it's frustrating when we don't try.
I'm going to side rail
about how, but
I'm going to side rail this just for a second. So you just reminded me of something. So I had a hacker or a scammer do things, and man, I just, played on that person. Like I knew it was a scam, and they were trying to impersonate someone internally, and I like turned it around on them. It was hilarious.
That's amazing. It feels good sometimes to do.
Well, I ended up pretending that we were in like, some secret relationship, and I was going to tell their wife. And he turned it around on him. He's like, but I just want he's like, I just need you to get the gift cards.
You're like, oh my gosh, I want to see this conversation.
I ended up screenshotting and posting it. All right, Lisa's also here. She says, happy Friday, everyone. And then I'm not sure what this comment means, but they said, accept a zebra. And so I'm not sure.
Maybe it was earlier from when we were saying something else.
And then that takes discipline, Nicole said, and she said she loves that idea of a safe word, Sarah. So I'm glad that you liked that. And then she said, really, we need more than two, ideally. I agree with that. I think that's on the political side of the house. And so she said, nope, that one wasn't Jana. So, and so I am not sure. So, we have, I think maybe a couple of people. Oh, black and white zebra. So black and white thinking.
Oh yeah,
so
exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I knew it had to be someone clever and funny in there. I can be very literal for rhetoric, for somebody who's practicing. Things can go over my head. Okay, that was cute.
Well, I like that. Zebra is, one thing that is black and white. Yes. She said I meant. And we actually, I did a show previously on black and white thinking as well. So those that are interested in that, I think that's a separate topic and a really good topic to do. And so I want to talk, we've been talking about sort of advertisers and politicians and how they subtly twist logical arguments. So that logo side with selective data and fallacies. So maybe if we could talk a little bit about how they do that and maybe some of the examples of how they do selective data and fallacies.
Yeah, sure. I think that's a good one. So by contrast, strong logos is reasoning that can withstand time and scrutiny. And I think that's really important. If you have a disagreement, if you disagree with somebody that's trying to persuade you and then it falls apart, red flag, right? So it's not data dumping, it's a structured reasoning. So logo asks us, are claims proportional to the evidence that we're making, right? Are the comparisons that we're making fair? Are we acknowledging uncertainty, right? That, that we don't know everything. And I think most importantly, like I said earlier, it slows us down, and that's its job. So some of the more common triggers on the other end, like I would say like cherry pick statistics, like 20% of the time. I've even done this just out of frustration where I'll be like having a conversation with someone and be like, well, my therapist said knowing damn well that's not how it was framed, out of frustration. I think missing baselines is a big one. Not having a standard to compare something to, no control group.
Yeah.
Isolating the information, taking it out of context, using data points like this cost 200 million without any real evidence. A big one is correlation presented as causation. So because of this policy, crime went down. And overconfident predictions, things like that. Those are big red flags that I see. I think the problem with bad logos is it doesn't look illogical. It looks incomplete. It looks like it's incomplete. So yeah, I think it's something like crime went up after this policy passed. So this policy caused it. Sounds logical, doesn't it?
Right.
But it quietly skips a few things. It skips other causes, prior trends, what was going on before, cases that were comparable, scale, context. Nothing about it is false, really. It's just that what's missing is real reasoning. And when technical language particularly is used to intimidate rather than explain, that's why I love being a technical writer. Logos has been hijacked. So that's what happens when people start talking down to us. So that's why we stop trusting people who speak academically. That's why I hate formal language. I tell people all the time, write professionally, not formally, unless you're writing a formal dissertation or obituary. That's kairos. So right time and place, so
yeah,
all of those kind of things go together. Sorry if I over answered that a little bit.
No,
I get excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about some of the examples that I've also seen as I dig into the data, because I'm very much a researcher. So I'm like, and so I'll hear things like, 200% increase. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, what was the starting number? If we're starting with 30, and it's only 200%, that's really not that big of a deal in, in what it is that we're talking about. And I love the fact that you talked about correlation and causation. I want to stop there because I think this one is one of the biggest ones that I have seen in whenever it comes to advertising, and especially politicians, is that, they'll say things like, and I'm going to give a very, an example that people might find a little controversial, but autism, for example, people will say, well, my child got autism after this happened. And it's like, okay, well, that's not necessarily, just because those two things happened at the same time doesn't mean that those things go together. We have to spend some time doing research and understanding the things that are along the way. I also will recognize that we also do have organizations that have skewed things from a testing perspective as well, to be able to, not show the real truth sometimes in the cases or the studies that they have done. So I think that those two things, it is sometimes super hard to know which one to believe. And so a lot of times we'll go with, well, I know someone that this happened to, and so we
start to use anecdotal, we lean on anecdotal, and emotional. Exactly right. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so it's those types of things that we have to be willing. And I loved the fact that you said we have to slow down. And I think that's where social media, the more that I've been looking at it, I'm like, this is not a place for us to debate anything.
It escalates too quickly, and there's no credibility between the people there. And so that just devolves into fighting and screaming.
It does.
And abuse, and it's really sad. And I've been there. I've gotten to the point where I've been frustrated and said things I wish I hadn't.
And people will probably laugh at me because I am one of the people that has definitely done this, a lot in the past. And recently I've been going, hey, would you like to go have some lunch? And I had the person, I said, I would love to talk about this. I understand what it is. I would love it for us to ask some questions and to be more curious.
That's it. Instead of judgmental, if we can start being more curious, and that's been my New Year's resolution, and less judgmental. Sorry to interrupt. I can't emphasize that enough. Yes.
Agreed. And so she ended up texting me back and she was like, hey, I wanted you to know I wasn't ignoring you. I just, she's like, I'm so consumed with all of this stuff. And I'm like, no worries. Just let me know, when you want to, have this conversation, because that is the only way that I think we're going to be able to come back together is
In advance.
we've got to stop arguing online and just welcome, pick up the phone. If they're long distance, if they're there, just go have some lunch. Like, let's just talk about this.
Yeah, exactly. And that invites another part of rhetoric that's really interesting, which is the three tenses. Have you heard of those?
No, go ahead.
So they're really interesting because there's the past one, which is forensic, right? So usually it's best using like the court of law, who done it, right? And what meeting out the punishment or recourse, I guess, better word. I don't like punishment all that much. So that's your past tense. And then that one, we need it. But if we stay there as like in our interpersonal relationships, that's where it gets really corroded. So then there's the present tense, which is where are we now? What are our current values? And that one can get corroded really quickly, because it causes tribalism, us versus them. And we do need to establish where our values are and what's happening right now, certainly. So it's important. It's positive at the same time. And then there's the most important and Aristotle's favorite, and for good reason, which was the future. And it was about choice. So instead of getting stuck on blame, and instead of getting stuck, which we all do, I do, certainly, so I'm not innocent, in tribalism, we should be really looking, if we can, when we can, especially in our interpersonal relationships, at how to move forward together. And if we can do that with civility, then we can we're practicing it in our house. Then we start, I think, learning how to do that outside of our house. And it starts to grow from our home to our community, to our jobs, to our government. And, it just takes all of us, one of us really, to sort of bring more people along and have these discussions like you do. And thank you for doing it, because, the more people that we can get to see this the way that it was intended, the better, we're all going to be, because the whole purpose was to build an ethical democracy that worked for everyone as best as it could.
Yeah. And I want to stop for a moment, because all the things you said, I think if anybody goes away with anything, I want them to understand how rhetoric is being used in an unethical way. And so across the board in so many different ways. And so the only way that we're going to be able to come to a place that we can reestablish this is be willing to do it ourselves, to understand. So if you understand these three things and can ask yourself, what is the credibility of this person? And, are they being authentic? Are they being, are they
which tense are they in? Are they living in the past and present and future while you're thinking it?
Yes. Yeah, I love that. So are they, living in the past? Are they living in, the future? Are they present in what it is that they're thinking? Are they willing to ask questions? Or are they just like, nope, this is the way it, way it is?
Yes,
and so, when someone does those types of things, if we can take time to slow down, and if they're unwilling to do that, then we just say, look, I prefer to slow down, and really look at things. And if you're willing to do that with me, I would love to be able to do that.
Yes.
But if you're not, then I'm not sure that we can, really
make
continue
progress.
This. Yeah, make progress.
Yeah.
And so
agreed.
I think we just need to do more of that as a society.
I agree. That makes, if we could, that'd be beautiful. I think we can.
I think so too.
Yeah.
We can. I do want to say hello to Myra. So Myra's coming in. She says, happy Friday, all. There were also some other comments that came in. Jana says, correlation does not equal causation. And this is just plain science. Dig into those sorts of claims because they're flimsy.
Yes.
And then she also said, I have personally found that you can often have civil discourse on social media, at least on LinkedIn. I agree with LinkedIn.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
If you structure your posts and comments appropriately. Some people don't play by the rules, of course, but you don't need to engage with them. If you set the tone, the conversation often follows in that vein. One bonus of social media is that your platform is maybe much bigger.
I did not mean to in any way put it down. Sorry if I sounded like I was. She's absolutely right about all of it. Like anything good and bad and is invited into it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I will say that I have posted in a very specific way stating, hey, I want us to look at this. If you're going to comment, I would ask that we look at this in a civil way. And I've still had people that are just come on and are not civil, like said some really nasty stuff. And I'm like, look, like that's not acceptable on this post. And so you do have to sort of set some boundaries and things like that to set those things. And I think that really goes into the next part of, what are the ethical guidelines or rhetorical guidelines that us as writers or speakers should observe when employing these appeals?
That's a good question. And because they're persuasive, I think particularly that's the whole goal, right? Is persuasion, ethical persuasion.
Yeah.
We should always be asking, am I clarifying something or am I pressuring somebody to believe or do something? So if I'm clarifying it, then it should make perfect sense why I'm asking. That's why clarity in language, and especially in the kind of writing I do, matters. Excuse me. If it just feels like pressure with no clarity, you've got a problem. For both as the speaker, author, and the audience. The other one I think is, am I inviting judgment? That's a big one. Or am I just demanding agreement? If you are not able to withstand scrutiny, judgment, then your credibility falls apart, period. So does your logic and reasoning. Every argument should be able to withstand and invite scrutiny. It should invite it, because you're trying to get at the truth, not be right for the sake of being right. And I have a lot of people I know that I love so much who, and I think I've done this a lot in my life, but as I've gotten older and started to think about things, I stopped caring about being right, because, there are times I get frustrated, and I'm human, but for the most part, I've gotten good about caring more about getting to the, an ethical conclusion than about, just being right about what I'm talking about. So those things matter. I think another one that really matters is, would this still hold up if the listener disagreed with me? Like I said, that's just inviting argument, but they're good things to kind of put in your pocket and remember. I think that it's important to also know that, ethical rhetoric, it allows time, like we talked about. It welcomes the scrutiny, like we talked about. It survives disagreement, like we talked about, but it also respects autonomy, individual thinking. And if it doesn't, then it's becoming cult-like. And I think if persuasion requires confusion, then it's already unethical to start.
Yeah. I have found that when I have the best conversations, we focus on as a starting point, where could we agree? And so when you get to a point, like for me, that's building trust. Like, okay, can we at least find something that both of us on this topic? And there was a show that I was noticing that they did that. And it was funny just to watch people some people really trying to find a middle, and the other side was nope. And they just would not find something that would bring them into the middle ground. And I think that if we spent a little more time on hey, let's start off with what it is that we can potentially agree upon, that builds connection. And it allows you to be able to build, because I think that a part of, as we're looking at all of these things, building connection with people, which is the first part of the trust and authenticity, and having that reputation of being able to work together. I think that adds credibility. When someone is not willing to even look at any side, you're losing in credibility.
Big time. They're no longer accountable for what they're claiming at that point.
Correct. So I can't believe anything you say at that point, because you have demonstrated that you're unwilling to look at anything from another point of view.
Right. Which is you're limiting your own perspective. Unfortunately, we all have an echo chamber that we live in. And until we invite other people into it, we don't have the capacity to expand all that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I think that, whenever I think about those other guidelines or guardrails or what we should be doing, is I think that if you go back, to the ethos, pathos, and logos, and ask yourself those questions like, am I being credible? Am I, doing this in a way that's ethical? Am I am I looking at an emotional appeal in things, but not trying to sway people to believe exactly how I believe? And then am I able to back up what it is that I'm saying? So I think if we just go back to the purpose of like the whole show of those three things, we ask ourselves whenever we're doing those things, that's also a great way to understand if you're being true and going about it
It's
from
a
a civil
checklist.
perspective.
It checks in. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes like clarity is so important. Like I'll give you a great example really quick. We were working with a financial advisor, right? It was free for us because my dad had him. So like legacy thing. So I was like, let's just do it. Fine. And finally he convinced us he was telling us about insurance, and he was saying like, we get way too much over here, way too little over here. And it was starting to make sense. Like my wife and I, particularly, she hated insurance. They just take your money, you don't get anything back. He didn't convince us or pressure us to buy this insurance. He clarified the difference between how you use insurance in a smart way and what the insurance companies don't want you doing, and how you do it in a not as smart way. So one of the things we decided to do was like, we don't have $300,000 worth of assets in our home. So why do we need that much insurance? So we lowered that and raised our car coverage in case somebody hit us, right? The things that keep us safe and keep our money sort of the same. That clarification wasn't pressure, and it helped me to feel sound reason and judgment. He did use emotion because he described some situations he had with clients where they had been, clipped and it ruined their whole life, and it made a lot of sense. I mean, I have epilepsy from a traumatic brain injury, so it's under control, but it happened. So, I get it. And I think that was a really good example of him using all of those in a way that wasn't pressuring. It was just a clarifying. And that is a really good use of rhetoric.
Yeah. And, and I think about it even from a sales perspective of when, a lot of times we're using fear whenever it comes to technology because we're encouraging people to go to the cloud. And so when 2020 rolled around, it was funny. We did have some people going, oh, this is what you were talking about. Like those types of things. And so, it's being able to talk about it from an emotional perspective, and you might be calling upon the fears, but are you able to then back it up with those facts to then demonstrate, like, here's some examples of the things that we dealt with. We were dealing with a lot of people from a ransomware and perspective, and the IT person didn't really want to, didn't really understand all the things that they needed to do, for example. And sometimes that's hard because you also are having to sort of call out people that people don't, they're like, oh no, the person knows what they're doing. And so they don't even test out their credibility.
Yes, I've seen that.
In asking the additional questions of, yes, I'm sure your IT person, you definitely, that you have built a trust with them. Wouldn't it also be good to just verify,
absolutely,
those types of things? So, maybe not calling out their credibility, but also saying, like,
asking the right questions.
Yeah. Isn't it worth just verifying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And if we're not verifying, then we're not trusting our own reason and judgment. We're trusting someone else's just based on their credentials. And there are so very few people who I have a mentor, and my wife is one of my mentors. She's very smart, but I have another one who's not, I'm not married to it. And she obviously, and she's got like really sound reasoning, but it still has to make sense to me. Like, for me to want to do it and appeal to me emotionally, no matter how sound the judgment is.
Yeah. So I want to get into some of the unethical items and how it is that we can really spot it. So, how can we help the audience to train to spot and resist unethical uses of ethos, pathos, and logos?
That's a good question. So I think it's important to remember that when we're resistant to something, it is not being cynical. Well, sometimes in this tribalist landscape that we're in right now, that can feel like I notice people be like, well, no, you would never do that, or this person would never do that. If you're resistant to something, you're not just being cynical, you're paying attention, and that's good. So whenever I encounter a strong message, I'll just tell you from my own perspective, I ask, the first thing I say is, what emotion am I feeling? What are they activating in me right now? Is it anger? Usually I can pinpoint it by how it like feels, that pit in your stomach feeling, like, oh yeah, there it is. It's that. what information would slow this down? What additional information would I need to help slow the feelings down, the emotion down, so that I could digest it in a reasonable and logical manner? I think also, like, what's missing? Is there something missing from what I'm being told here? And most importantly, one of the most important, I think, is who's benefiting if I don't question this. That's a big one. We don't ask ourselves enough. What is this person getting if I don't question what they're saying and just take it as word? Rhetorical devices themselves are neutral. And that's important. It's their use that's determining the effect. And, I think, that's the important thing for us to keep in mind when we're thinking about those kind of, those triggers.
Yeah. As I was thinking about this overall topic, I sort of went back to my 7th grade class of middle school and some of the things that we were taught. And one of them that for whatever reason I always remembered was like bandwagon, so everyone's doing it, type of things. And so I do think that it's important to sort of brush back up on some of those tactics that we were taught in school. And I know my daughter's learning it right now in 9th grade, some of those types of things. And she's like, oh, that's a straw man theory, like she's like,
Paper tiger, like, yeah.
And so like, it was hilarious to like hear her, sort of say this to different people. And so, thinking about those types of things, we talked about, for example, fear of missing out. But some of the other ones were also scarcity and urgency. And we talked a little bit about fear, but, like a limited time, offer ends, those types of things, or reciprocity. And I think that is one of the things that's also used these days, is that you almost feel obliged, to have to do things. And when we think about sometimes, some of the messages we've received throughout life, and I'm going to throw out religion as an example of, you just have to have faith, okay. Yes. And what else,
Right.
for
Does this
me?
make sense? Does what I'm reading here make sense? Does it work and align with what I believe? Yeah. And even in the Bible, it says to question. So it's funny when people think that we're not, like, it's just ironic, or maybe on the nose. I don't know.
Yeah. And, and one of the things that I have found, and we've touched upon this throughout, is that the pausing that you talked about. So taking the time. And I really love the fact that you were saying, like, how do I feel? And so taking that moment to understand how you feel. And as I mentioned earlier with my husband, we had the safe word, but then the next thing was really breathing. So when we're feeling a particular way, one of the ways that we can sort of see how, come back down is to do that box breathing, or to breathe in, breathe out. It really helps to sort of reset the emotions that we have within us, to be able to then focus on the logic, which is the logos side of the house. And so for me, in order to get to that third piece, we have to get over sometimes that emotional piece. Sometimes people will appeal very much to that pathos side. So if we can reset our bodies to then start to think even clearer, that is when we can really come back down and say, okay, well, is this something I really need to fear? Okay, well, let's think about, the things that I need to, potentially do, but not always, not act in fear. So I want to encourage people to really, the purpose of this is awakening that inner power. That inner power is being able to reset yourself and come back within yourself to really learn to trust your intuition and not move out of fear.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. Looking for loaded language too helps us to avoid that fear too, because the loaded language chooses an emotional impact rather than explaining, and when language is just thinking for me, I think rhetoric crosses over into manipulation.
Yeah. So I want to start to wrap things up. And so I was thinking about maybe what questions might we ask ourselves to balance, to foster critical literacy, whether it's of media or a speaker or things like that, what are some further questions we might ask ourselves to ensure that we're just balancing what it is that we hear?
Sure. I think the most important thing would be like, what is the goal of this persuasion, period? I mean, classic rhetoric really identified three things. And rather than try to explain this for Aristotle, I'll just use his explanation, which was that it was our mood. How should I be feeling right now? Our mind, what should I believe or understand? Sorry. And our action, what should I do? So it's important, I think, to know or remember that ethical rhetoric aligns these things all honestly, and manipulative rhetoric disguises its real goal. So every persuasive act really revolves around blame, who caused this, values, what matters here, and choice, what should be done. And when blame is overstated, we find that our anger spikes. When our values are oversimplified, the nuance or it becomes black or white, the nuance disappears. And when our choices are rushed, I think our autonomy, our individual ability to think sort of erodes. So that's why we really look at the time, tense, and judgment, to ensure that we're not being manipulated. And I think it occurs mostly when future speculation is treated as a past fact. It's a big one. When value statements are become demands for actions, blame is assigned without evidence, which we're seeing all the time everywhere. So we just, controlling our tense is controlling our judgment, really.
Yeah, I love that. I have a couple more that I would like to add. And so, sometimes it's also looking at the person. So first asking, who is persuading me in this, and then asking, okay, well, how are they doing it? Because everyone that's giving you a message is persuading you, but understanding how they're doing it, and then what techniques, and the why, and what techniques they're doing it. So, asking yourself, does this message lean too heavily on emotions and omit evidence, a part of things? And then just being aware of the false dilemmas, the straw man, the slippery slopes, the overgeneralization. Those are the things that then don't have the factual evidence, and they're just playing on the emotions. And that's what we're seeing a lot these days, is people are just skipping the last step. I feel like the first and the last step in a lot of ways.
Yes, they just appeal to our emotion, right? And the credibility is just, I'm this person, and that's the weakest persuasion around. But it can be very manipulative for people depending on their situation and where they are too. So kairos again.
Yeah, I love that. And I think timing is also important. Like, what else is happening at this time? And, is there a reason?
Or suffering too. That's a real thing. People are suffering. And so, of course, we're going to be more easily manipulated when we're stressed and life is hard.
Yeah. So, well, I loved this conversation today. And
thank you so much.
I really want to thank you for coming on, because this is definitely a topic I couldn't have done on my own. And so I really love that I found you. And I appreciate that, you're a virgin live streamer.
Yes.
And I was your first.
Yes. I'll never forget it. It was perfect.
And so thank you so much for joining us today. And if people want to connect with you, what would be the best way for them to connect with you?
So I'm all over LinkedIn. I love to write, so I do that often. I took a little break after the dog, but I do generally post daily, if not every other day. And they can reach me through my email, Kristina Harman. It's just my full name at gmail.com.
Okay, perfect. And then be sure to connect with her on LinkedIn. She has a lot of good content that she is posting out there. So go out there, connect, read. I
put it on my featured article. I think that's what they're called, featured posts. I don't do articles because I don't like the glamorous. I know, it's like my thing. So I just put them in as a post and put them up there as featured, and they're all there. There's a ton of them on rhetorical devices and how to use them in your writing to persuade, even if you're a technical writer, because you're still persuading.
Yes.
Don't forget.
Yeah, I love that. And that's how I found you. So I just simply did a search on LinkedIn for people related to this particular topic. And just so you know, you're one of the people that came up. So
thank you. Good to know.
I love that.
Awesome.
Yes. And so I want to thank everybody for their interaction today, the new people that have joined today. And so I hope that you will continue to come back. We're going to be continuing. So next week, as a reminder, we're going to be having that more intimate conversation, that private offline conversation with everyone. So I welcome you to come back and join the conversation. And then we'll be starting with another topic. The first week of February, we will come back. We'll start with another one that will help build awareness on how people are potentially dividing us, or things related to shame and guilt, and all of the things that people are potentially doing to be able to help us not be our fearless, authentic self. And so, again, thank you, Kristina, for joining us.
Thank you so much. I look forward to hearing the next one.
Yes. And then everyone, thank you again. Have a badass Friday and an amazing weekend, and have an amazing following week. And then we will see you next Friday.
Thank you so much. Yes.